Welcome to True Echo, where real struggles meet unbelievable outcomes. Here, we bring you dramatic, inspirational stories that dive deep into injustice, courage, and the power of standing up for what's right. Today's story will challenge your assumptions and leave you with one unforgettable truth: dignity is not given. It's claimed. The marble floor of Liberty Financial's flagship downtown branch gleamed under the soft Tuesday morning sunlight. It was a scene of quiet rhythm, the low hum of customers whispering in line, the mechanical tapping of keys at each teller station, and the sharp click of polished shoes moving across the floor. But that serenity was about to shatter. Jessica Carter waited quietly, blending into the queue like any other customer. Dressed in a crisp white blouse and a navy overcoat, she looked poised but understated. Her natural curls were neatly pulled back, her makeup minimal. She didn't come with an entourage or designer labels. No one knew her name. And that was exactly the point. She wasn't here for a meeting or publicity. She came to observe. Jessica had spent over 2 decades building Liberty Financial from the inside, breaking every glass ceiling along the way. Now, as the company's CEO, the first black woman to ever hold that title, she carried a legacy. But recent whispers had disturbed her. Whispers of cold treatment, of microaggressions, of racism hidden beneath policy language. The official reports looked fine. But Jessica trusted what people didn't write more than what they did. She wanted to know the truth. And the truth was standing right in front of her in the form of a Latino construction worker being grilled like a criminal for trying to cash a check. Jessica's eyes narrowed. The same teller who just finished a bubbly conversation with a wealthy white client now scrutinized this man's ID under a light, flipping it like it was counterfeit. Another teller sent an elderly Asian couple to take a number, without so much as eye contact. Jessica's stomach clenched. She stepped forward. Amy Bennett, the teller, took one look at Jessica and immediately stiffened. The cheerful smile she'd offered to the previous customer vanished. Jessica calmly slid her withdrawal slip across the counter. "I'd like to withdraw $175,000, please." Amy blinked. Her eyes moved slowly, too slowly, from the slip to Jessica's face, and then down to her ID. Jessica remained silent, watching her. Every tick of the second hand seemed longer than the last. This is a large amount," Amy murmured, her tone suddenly hushed. Jessica didn't move. "Yes," she replied calmly, "but it's within my limit." Amy picked up Jessica's ID like it might burn her fingers. She flipped it. Checked the back. Squinted. Then whispered something to a colleague, who immediately motioned to someone else. Within seconds, a man in a red tie and starched shirt stood beside her. Greg Harris. Senior teller. "Is there a problem?" he asked loudly enough for the entire line to hear. Jessica didn't flinch. "No problem at all," she replied. "I'd simply like to withdraw my own money." Greg glanced at the slip, then back at Jessica's face, his expression hardening. "We've had a lot of fraud lately, especially with customers like this." His hesitation was barely perceptible. But the implication wasn't. Jessica straightened slightly. "I've shown all proper ID." Greg nodded as if he hadn't heard. "Double-check her account." Carefully. The murmur began. Customers behind Jessica leaned in. Phones came out. The discomfort was spreading like wildfire. Still, Jessica didn't flinch. Then Amy spoke again. "Could you provide another form of identification?" Without missing a beat, Jessica reached into her wallet and produced her Liberty Financial debit card. Amy rubbed her thumb across the raised numbers, inspecting it like counterfeit cash. Jessica could feel her dignity slowly being stripped in front of a growing audience. Still, she said nothing. Greg, now emboldened, leaned over the screen and frowned. "I'm going to need you to explain exactly where this money came from." Jessica blinked slowly. "It's from my personal savings. Earned over years of work." Your records will confirm that. Greg's eyes narrowed. Are you sure this isn't a lawsuit settlement? Or, something like that? His voice was louder now, accusatory. Nearby customers exchanged glances. One smirked. Another whispered. Jessica inhaled through her nose, pushing back the surge of humiliation. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Hey, came a younger voice. Jason Collins. Barely out of college, full of smug arrogance. Did you just win the lottery or something? That's a lot of money for, well, someone like you. Jessica turned her head. Slowly. Calmly. Excuse me. Jason didn't blink. I mean, usually, people like you don't withdraw that kind of cash unless it's, you know, from court cases or settlements. She looked him in the eye and replied coolly, my personal finances are none of your concern. Jason shrugged with a smirk. Just saying. Gotta be careful these days. Jessica's voice remained steady. I'll remember everything you just said. And I hope you will too. At that moment, the branch manager, Sandra Miller, emerged from her office. Blonde, tailored, and imperious, she walked toward the commotion with a look of supreme irritation. What seems to be the problem here? She asked Greg. Greg leaned in and whispered something. Sandra's eyes slid to Jessica, and her nostrils flared. She strode forward. Get her out of here. Right now. The room froze. Jessica raised her hand, palm open and slow, reaching into her purse, not with panic, but with purpose. What happened next would change everything. Jessica Carter's hand moved with deliberate grace into her purse, not with fear, but the calm precision of someone fully in control. The security guard who just grabbed her arm flinched, unsure if he should retreat or tighten his grip. Ma'am, please, no sudden movements, he muttered. Jessica ignored him. She pulled out her phone and tapped a number without hesitation. Her voice, when it came, was even. Michael Roberts speaking, came a voice from the other end. Michael. It's Jessica, she said plainly. The moment those words left her lips, everything in the bank seemed to freeze. Amy stiffened. Jason's smirk faltered. Greg's fingers hovered in midair above the keyboard. Sandra, midway through ordering security again, stopped cold. Jessica continued without raising her voice. I'm at the downtown branch. I'm trying to make a withdrawal from my personal account. I've been accused, interrogated, and disrespected in full view of your staff and customers. She locked eyes with Sandra. Please come down here immediately. Michael's tone dropped in urgency. Which branch? Jessica replied without blinking. Yours. The call ended. Jessica slowly lowered her phone. Sandra stared at her like she'd just seen a ghost. You, know Michael Roberts? Her voice cracked slightly. You're. Jessica straightened her shoulders. You'll find out very soon. Jason, now visibly nervous, stepped back from the counter. Greg was deathly pale, and Amy looked as if she wanted to vanish entirely. 15 minutes later, the front doors to Liberty Financial's downtown branch burst open like Judgment Day had arrived. Michael Roberts, Senior Operations Director, entered the lobby flanked by 2 security officers and 2 HR officials. He didn't stop to introduce himself or survey the room, he went straight for Jessica. Jessica, he said, his voice low but laced with fury. I am so sorry. He turned immediately to the guards. Release her. Now. They did. Then he turned to the tellers, voice rising. Do you even know who this woman is? Do you understand what you've done? He didn't wait for an answer. This is Jessica Carter, CEO of Liberty Financial. The woman who signs every one of your paychecks. And you treated her like a criminal. The room imploded into stunned silence. Sandra's knees buckled slightly as she gripped the counter for support. Greg swayed like he might faint. Jason looked like he wanted to disappear behind the teller glass. Jessica stood quietly, her expression unreadable. Michael turned to Sandra next, his tone cold and final. "Miss Miller, you're done. As of this moment, you are suspended pending formal termination. You will be escorted from this branch today." "Wait, please," Sandra stammered. "I didn't know. I had no idea." "That's the problem," Michael snapped. "You didn't know because you didn't care. You judged her based on the color of her skin and the clothes on her back. Not the content of her character. And now, the entire world's going to see it." He gestured to the customers, half of whom were still recording on their phones. "Greg Harris. Jason Collins. Step forward." They obeyed without protest, their faces ashen. "You're both dismissed as well," Michael said without even glancing at them. "You'll receive notice in writing, but let me make this perfectly clear, what you've done isn't just a violation of protocol. It's a violation of our values. Of our identity as a company." Greg opened his mouth, but Michael cut him off. "Don't even try to explain." Then, Michael turned to Jessica. "Do you want to address the staff? They need to hear it from you." Jessica looked around the branch, the shocked employees, the disturbed customers, the faces filled with disbelief and shame. She stepped forward. Her voice was calm, composed, but unmistakably powerful. "What happened to me today isn't rare. It's not an exception. It happens in stores, restaurants, banks, airports, every single day, to people who look like me." She let the words sink in. "I came here today not as your CEO, but as a customer. As a black woman trying to make a simple withdrawal. And I was treated like a thief, a liar, and a threat." Several employees looked down, unable to meet her gaze. "I'm not angry that you didn't recognize me," Jessica continued. "I'm devastated that you didn't treat me with basic human decency. That is the real crisis at Liberty Financial." A long silence. Then Jessica turned to Michael. "We're going to fix this. And it starts now." Michael nodded. "We're locking down the branch. An internal audit is starting immediately. No one involved is walking away from this without accountability." Sandra sobbed softly, still rooted to her spot. But Jessica didn't waver. She looked at every staff member, every person watching. "This isn't just about me. It's about every customer who's ever walked in here and felt invisible. That ends today." As Michael signaled security to escort the terminated staff out, Jessica felt the weight of years of struggle press against her chest, but this time, it wasn't crushing her. It was lifting her. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. And it was only the beginning. The heavy glass doors closed behind Sandra Miller, Greg Harris, and Jason Collins with a definitive hiss, the sound echoing across the stunned silence of the bank lobby. Every remaining staff member stood frozen, their faces drawn and pale as the weight of what had just transpired settled over them like a thick fog. Jessica Carter, still calm and composed, turned to Michael Roberts and spoke in a tone that made clear this moment wasn't just about punishment, it was about transformation. "We're not just firing people today," she said. "We're exposing a deep, cultural illness. I want everyone in this branch, and across the entire Liberty Financial network, to know what happened here. Because this is not just a one-time disgrace. It's a pattern. And it ends now." Michael nodded. "Understood. I've already called for a company-wide emergency board meeting. The directors are being briefed with surveillance footage. They've seen enough to know this is a defining moment." Jessica's gaze swept the lobby, taking in the wide eyes and slumped shoulders of her remaining staff. Some were trembling. Some, like Amy Bennett, looked deeply ashamed, others simply stunned. Jessica stepped forward. "I want to make something very clear," she said, her voice strong. "Not every person who stood silently today was a villain. But silence in the face of injustice is complicity. You saw your colleagues disrespecting a customer. You heard slurs veiled in policy. And you said nothing. A few staff shifted uncomfortably. A middle-aged teller bit her lip, blinking back tears. This isn't about making you afraid, Jessica added, softening slightly. It's about waking you up. Because every time a black woman walks into a bank and is asked to prove she belongs, something in our society breaks. And if you work here, you don't get to break it anymore. Across the room, several customers clapped quietly. One elderly black man nodded in solemn agreement. Another woman wiped a tear from her cheek. Michael stepped in again. Effective immediately, all Liberty Financial employees will be required to undergo comprehensive anti-discrimination and equity training. No exceptions. We're rebuilding our values from the ground up. Jessica nodded. And I'll be leading that initiative personally. A ripple moved through the staff. The CEO herself? Hands-on. It was unheard of. But Jessica wasn't interested in corporate distance or symbolic gestures. This was about direct, unfiltered change. And she was done waiting. Before I leave, she continued, I want to speak directly to our customers. Every person who was in this bank today. If you were recording, keep those videos. Post them if you want. Speak your truth. A young Latina mother in the back raised her phone in silent approval. She had recorded everything. And now, the world would see. This story isn't mine alone, Jessica added. It's yours. It belongs to every person who's ever been judged for how they look, what language they speak, or what zip code they live in. And with that, she turned back to the counter, back to Amy, who now looked like a crumbling statue of shame. Do you have the authority to complete my withdrawal? Amy's lips trembled. Why yes, ma'am. Then let's finish it. It took every ounce of composure Amy could muster to steady her hands as she keyed in the request. The printer spat out a confirmation slip, the vault door buzzed open in the back, and within minutes, a heavy envelope was placed in front of Jessica. $175,000. No apologies. No disclaimers. Just what she had asked for all along. As Jessica slid the envelope into her bag, she looked at Amy and said quietly, I hope this changes you. Amy didn't speak. She simply nodded, tears streaking silently down her cheeks. Jessica turned and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking across the marble floor like a countdown to a new era. Michael followed a few paces behind. But just before she reached the door, Jessica stopped. She turned, facing the employees and customers one last time. This is not the end, she said. This is the beginning. With that, she walked out into the bright sun, a silent storm in her wake, her head held high. Inside the branch, no one moved. Not for several seconds. Not until Michael cleared his throat and addressed them with quiet gravity. Prepare yourselves, he said. Tomorrow, everything changes. And they believed him. Because they had just witnessed a reckoning. The next morning, Liberty Financial's towering headquarters bustled with attention so thick it seemed to reverberate off the polished glass walls. Employees filed into the main conference hall, hundreds of them, whispers trailing behind as rumors and fragments of yesterday's incident traveled faster than truth. They all knew why they were there. Jessica Carter, the CEO who had been mistaken, humiliated, and nearly removed from her own bank's branch, had called this emergency meeting. Everyone from senior vice presidents to customer service trainees sat shoulder to shoulder, fidgeting under the weight of expectation. A few clutched notebooks, others their phones. But most just watched the stage where the podium stood, empty under a single spotlight. At exactly 9 a.m., Jessica walked in. Alone. She didn't pause for dramatic effect. She didn't smile. She moved with quiet resolve, the air around her charged with authority. Dressed in a navy blue tailored suit with a simple gold pin at her lapel, she looked like what she was, a woman who had endured the storm and was now ready to rebuild. As she took the stage, the room fell silent. Jessica looked out over the packed hall. She didn't need a script. She had lived every word she was about to say. Yesterday, she began, I was profiled and disrespected at one of our branches. I walked in as a customer and was treated like a criminal. Murmurs rippled, but no one dared speak. I want you to understand something, Jessica continued, her voice gaining strength. This isn't the first time I've experienced this kind of prejudice. But it is the first time I've seen it rot the institution I've given my life to building. She took a breath. What happened to me is happening to our customers, right now, in places we think are functioning perfectly. And that means something in our culture is deeply broken. And I won't let it continue, not for one more day. A soft shifting of bodies. Uneasy looks exchanged. People began to understand, this wasn't just a speech. This was a turning point. I've launched a full internal investigation into every branch's service conduct. We're going back 2 years. We'll look at every customer complaint, every case of bias or mistreatment, especially the ones that were ignored. Heads began to nod. Effective immediately, Jessica said, Liberty Financial is launching a cultural accountability initiative. We're setting new, mandatory standards for service, respect, and transparency. Every employee, from board members to interns, will undergo intensive equity and inclusion training. Not once, but regularly. She scanned the crowd. Her words rang like a mission statement carved in steel. We will also be introducing a customer bill of rights. It will be publicly posted in every branch, translated into multiple languages, and every customer will know exactly how they deserve to be treated. Michael Roberts, standing just off stage, folded his arms and nodded. Jessica continued. We are creating a new reporting system, anonymous and fully protected. Any employee who sees or experiences bias can speak up, without fear of retaliation. I've also established a team of outside consultants and civil rights advocates to audit our process. They report directly to me. A collective inhale moved through the crowd. Jessica softened her voice, not in weakness, but with gravity. I love this company. I built my career here. But loving something means being willing to confront its flaws. She stepped away from the podium, walking slowly across the front of the stage. If you are uncomfortable with these changes, I understand. You are free to leave. We will help you exit respectfully. But if you stay, you will uphold the values of dignity, equality, and fairness. Every single day. Now the audience was leaning in. You will treat every customer like you would your mother. Your child. Yourself. She paused. This isn't political. It's personal. A silence fell so complete, you could hear the hum of the projector in the ceiling. Jessica stopped, turned, and returned to the podium. I want every person in this room to know, change is coming. And I am not asking for your permission. I'm asking for your commitment. As she stepped down, the room remained frozen in collective reflection. Then it happened. A single clap. Then another. Then a wave of applause swelled across the room until it rose into a standing ovation. Jessica stood still as they clapped, not for her ego, but for the moment itself. For the realization that the bank they thought they worked for was becoming something bigger, something better. When the applause died down, Michael stepped forward. Today, Liberty Financial reclaims its name. Today, we honor not just our customers' assets, but their humanity. Jessica gave a nod of approval. The meeting ended not with a dismissal, but a call to action. And across the bank's 500 branches nationwide, the ripples of that morning would spark difficult conversations, bold choices, and, slowly, a better culture. But the fight was far from over. Outside of Liberty Financial's walls, another storm was brewing, because the public had seen the video. And the court of opinion wasn't just watching. It was about to judge. The video footage of Jessica Carter's confrontation at the downtown Liberty Financial branch exploded online within hours. Initially uploaded by a teenage customer who happened to be in the lobby during the incident, it showed Jessica calmly standing her ground while being humiliated by her own employees, culminating in the shocking reveal that she was, in fact, the CEO. By the next morning, hashtags like #StandWithJessica, #BankingWhileBlack, and #JusticeAtLiberty trended across every platform. News anchors, commentators, and influencers dissected every second of the video. Civil rights activists praised Jessica for maintaining her composure under fire. Financial analysts commended her swift disciplinary action. Parents showed their children the clip as a lesson in self-respect. Millions watched as Sandra Miller's words, "We only serve a certain class of clients," spread like wildfire, igniting outrage. Liberty Financial was in the national spotlight, and Jessica Carter had become a symbol. But while some celebrated her as a heroine of modern corporate leadership, others hurled vicious comments online, blaming her for playing the race card or abusing her power. Jessica had expected it. But what she hadn't anticipated was the groundswell of support that came not from public figures, but from regular people. Letters began to pour in. From black customers who had been quietly humiliated for years. From elderly couples denied loans. From young professionals whose accents, clothing, or skin color had drawn suspicion. They wrote with gratitude, with pain, with hope. Jessica read every one. She sat late at night in her study, her glasses perched low on her nose, surrounded by boxes of envelopes and stacks of printed emails. Some made her cry. Others lit fires in her belly. And that's when she knew, this wasn't just about Liberty Financial anymore. This was about the entire industry. The next week, Jessica appeared on national television for the first time since the incident. Interviewed by the highly respected host of Face the Nation, she didn't flinch under scrutiny. "Ms. Carter," the host began, "you're being hailed as both a CEO and a civil rights icon. But many say your firing of the employees was too harsh, was it personal?" Jessica's expression didn't change. "Nothing about this was personal. It was about principle. Some say you're setting a dangerous precedent by punishing what could be seen as unconscious bias." She shook her head slowly. Unconscious bias becomes dangerous when it's left unchecked. At Liberty Financial, we hold people accountable. Because customers shouldn't have to pay the price for someone else's prejudice. The host paused, visibly moved. "What would you say to people who look like you, watching this right now?" Jessica leaned forward, her voice soft but piercing. "I would say this, you are not invisible. You are not less. And you are not alone." The next day, Liberty Financial's share value jumped by 3%, an uncommon rise during a storm of public scrutiny. Industry insiders realized what the public already knew, Jessica wasn't damaging the company. She was saving it. But for Sandra Miller, Greg Harris, and Jason Collins, the storm was only beginning. Their names had become synonymous with corporate racism. News crews camped outside their homes. Online sleuths dug into their past social media posts, uncovering more damning evidence of bias and unprofessional behavior. Job offers vanished. Friends distanced themselves. Their LinkedIn profiles went dark. And civil rights organizations began filing formal complaints and lawsuits, citing their actions as emblematic of systemic injustice. Greg tried to reach out to former colleagues for support, none replied. Jason deleted every social media account he had after his name was posted to a viral wall of shame. Sandra retreated from public life entirely, barricading herself in her home, blaming Jessica for everything. But privately, she couldn't sleep. She replayed that moment at the teller counter over and over in her mind, the smugness in her voice, the judgment in her eyes. And now, the shame that wouldn't go away. Meanwhile, Jessica continued forward. She began traveling to different branches around the country, not as an executive, but as a mystery shopper. She dressed simply, spoke little, and let the staff reveal their culture without knowing who she was. Some surprised her with kindness and fairness. Others? Not so much. In one small town branch in Georgia, a black teenager was being questioned aggressively by a middle-aged teller for depositing a check from his college work-study program. Jessica intervened, not as CEO, but as a customer. "I'd like to speak to your manager," she said. "Who are you?" the teller snapped. Jessica smiled slightly. "You'll find out." By the end of that visit, 3 more employees were under review, and the teenager had been given a full scholarship fund, donated anonymously by a friend of the bank. Word spread quickly, Liberty Financial was no longer the same. The bank had teeth now. Teeth that bit down on discrimination and refused to let go. But with this transformation came risk. Whispers began to grow in upper corporate circles that Jessica was pushing too hard, moving too fast. Shareholders in conservative districts began raising concerns. Some regional VPs feared backlash. Jessica addressed it at the next board meeting. "If we lose clients because we enforce human dignity, they were never the kind of clients we needed," she said firmly. "If we lose staff who don't believe in equity, then we're not losing talent, we're shedding disease." Jonathan Davidson, the board chairman, leaned forward. "And if they try to push back harder? If they try to force your resignation?" Jessica met his gaze and smiled, eyes glinting with resolve. "Then I'll take every lesson I've learned and build something better. From the ground up." Again. No one said a word. Because deep down, they knew, she could. And if she did, the world would follow. Liberty Financial's transformation had started with a scandal. But in the months that followed, it became something far more profound, a blueprint. Other banks began to take notice. Industry executives who had once dismissed Jessica Carter as a symbolic diversity hire now studied her leadership style. They watched her unapologetically fire executives for bias, launch branch-wide listening sessions, and funnel millions into diversity recruitment programs, not as charity, but as strategy. And they watched her numbers soar. Customer satisfaction rose across nearly every demographic. Trust scores from Black, Latino, and Asian communities reached historic highs. New accounts opened by first-time customers, many of them small business owners from underrepresented backgrounds, skyrocketed. Jessica's name was now being mentioned in articles with words like legacy, movement, and the future of banking. Still, she remained focused not on praise but on purpose. One morning, she received an email from a former employee, Amy Bennett. It was short. Raw. "Ms. Carter. I want to thank you for what you said to me that day. I hope this changes you." It did. "I've been volunteering at a community center in the evenings. Working with underserved families. Learning. Listening. I don't know if I'll ever deserve a second chance, but I'm earning it. Thank you for the wake-up call I didn't know I needed. Amy." Jessica read the message in silence. Then she printed it out, folded it neatly, and placed it in a drawer in her desk, the one where she kept reminders of the people who had changed. Because change was the point. But not everyone was changing. Behind the scenes, resistance had begun to take form. A small but vocal group of legacy board members and regional investors felt Jessica was disrupting the corporate order. They feared that her sweeping reforms were alienating traditional clients. Whispers turned to murmurs. Memos were exchanged in secret. Some even began considering a vote of no confidence. Jessica was aware. She had spent too many years in boardrooms filled with polite smiles hiding sharpened knives to not sense what was happening. One afternoon, she walked into the main conference room without warning during a closed-door meeting between dissenting board members. She carried no folder. No laptop. Just a slip of paper. The men seated at the long oak table looked up, startled. The oldest among them, Franklin Coyle, gave her a tight smile. "Jessica. We weren't expecting." She held up a hand. Don't bother. She placed the paper in the center of the table. It was a letter of resignation. Gasps rippled through the room. Franklin blinked. You're stepping down. Jessica's voice was ice. No. I'm offering you a choice. They leaned forward. You can accept this letter, and watch this bank return to exactly what it was before, safe, mediocre, and dying, she said. Or you can shred that letter, stand behind me, and help build something better than anything this industry has seen in a century. Silence. One board member stood slowly. You've raised profits, increased trust, and turned our name from a joke into a mission, he said. I'm with her. Then another stood. And another. Only Franklin remained seated. Jessica looked at him calmly. You're afraid. I understand that. But fear isn't leadership. It's retreat. He stared at her, jaw clenched. Then, with a long sigh, he rose. Jessica picked up the letter. And tore it in half. From that moment on, the internal war was over. The transformation was no longer controversial, it was inevitable. Jessica returned to her office and stared out the window at the city skyline. Her phone buzzed. It was a news notification. Jessica Carter to deliver keynote at National Civil Rights Banking Summit. She smiled. Then turned to her assistant. Schedule something for tomorrow. What, ma'am? A visit. To which branch? Jessica looked back at the city and said quietly, all of them. Jessica Carter's car pulled into a quiet suburb just outside Atlanta, where a modest Liberty Financial branch sat tucked between a grocery store and a dry cleaner. The parking lot wasn't flashy. The signage wasn't new. But the inside? That was where the future was being tested. This was the first pilot branch fully retrofitted under Jessica's new Cultural Accountability Initiative. Diverse hiring. Multilingual signage. A transparent service dashboard. And a manager promoted from within, someone who had once been a part-time teller. Jessica entered unannounced. As usual, she wore no name tag. No formal entourage. Just a tailored blazer and her natural confidence. She moved to the end of the customer line and waited, quietly observing. The energy inside was different, light, welcoming. She watched an older black woman greeted warmly by a Latino teller in fluent Spanish. A young Asian couple was walked through a loan application with patience and respect. At the front, the new manager, Tasha Grant, a black woman in her early 30s, assisted a veteran struggling to understand mobile banking. Jessica smiled faintly. When her turn came at the teller counter, the young man behind it, early 20s, clean-cut, maybe just out of school, looked up and said brightly, "Good morning. How can I help you today?" Jessica slid a blank deposit slip forward. "I'm just here to observe." He tilted his head, confused. "Oh. Are you from corporate?" Jessica leaned in slightly. "I am corporate." The boy blinked, then recognition spread across his face. "Wait, you're Jessica Carter." She smiled. "Yes." His expression changed, first shock, then awe. "Wow. We've been reading about everything." "Thank you." I mean, we've all been trying to do better. It means a lot that you came here." "I'm proud of what I'm seeing," she said. "Keep it up." Just then, the branch manager, Tasha, emerged from her glass office. She froze in the doorway, realizing who was standing at the counter. Her eyes widened. "Ms. Carter." Jessica turned. "Ms. Grant." Tasha hurried over, her voice filled with both nerves and pride. "We didn't know you were visiting today." "That's the point," Jessica said gently. "I wanted to see the truth. And I did." Tasha's voice softened. "I used to work under Sandra Miller. Back then, I didn't think I'd ever make it past part-time. But now, Jessica placed a hand on her shoulder. Now you're running one of the most successful pilot branches in the region. Tasha beamed through tears. Because you gave us a chance. Jessica smiled. No. You earned it. Later that evening, back at headquarters, Jessica sat in her office reviewing footage from her visit. The progress was real, but the work was far from over. She opened her laptop and began drafting a speech for the upcoming National Civil Rights Banking Summit. When she took the stage a week later, thousands were in attendance. Media. Politicians. Executives. Everyday citizens. Her face glowed on giant screens as she stepped up to the podium, no notes in hand. When I walked into a bank branch months ago and was denied access to my own money, I was reminded that racism doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it whispers. It wears a smile. It wraps itself in policy. But it's always there. She paused. Let it sit. And sometimes, it takes being denied in your own house to finally see what needs to be burned down and rebuilt. Applause. I don't lead Liberty Financial just to grow numbers. I lead to build trust. And trust begins when people know they will be seen. Heard. Respected. Her eyes swept across the audience. Justice isn't just about courtrooms. It's about teller windows. It's about housing loans. Credit access. Financial dignity. She stepped back. The applause grew louder. She returned, only for one final line. And to anyone who still thinks this isn't your fight. One day, it will be. So choose your side now. The hall erupted. Jessica descended the steps, her name now echoing not just through her industry, but through every community that had ever been marginalized, denied, or dismissed. She wasn't just fixing a bank. She was changing a nation. And outside, across Liberty Financial's thousands of branches, a new motto quietly rolled out across every poster, pamphlet, and screen. Every person counts. Every voice matters. Every dollar deserves respect. And it all started with a single moment. When one woman was told she couldn't touch her own money. And replied, not with anger. But with transformation. At True Echo, we share stories that challenge the status quo and celebrate those brave enough to stand against injustice. Jessica Carter reminded us that true leadership means never staying silent when the system fails. Her quiet power brought down years of bias, and built something far better in its place. Let her story echo in your life. Speak up. Stand tall. And always demand the dignity you deserve. Subscribe for more real, powerful stories. Share this video if it moved you, and tell us in the comments, have you ever been judged unfairly? Your story matters.